And we are live. Welcome to the show, everyone. Welcome to the Maximo show here at VOD Pod Media. We got to give a special shout out to Gylan Jackson, who makes all these squeaky clean streams happen from the jump. Man, we're having a good time out here. We hope you're doing well wherever you may be listening from. Give us a little text. Go ahead and type it in on your phones. If you're driving, don't type and drive, but go ahead and pull over and tell us where you're watching from. Shout out to all of our people inside the continental United States, wherever you may be watching. Big shout out to all of our people on the East Coast, because we know you know our guest. And that is Mr. Mike Diaz, a.k.a. Juan Bago, who's joining us all the way from the East Coast. Big shout out to my man Mike for joining us tonight. Man, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to be on the show. We've known each other for a while. And so when you asked to be a part of this, there's no other answer but yes. So
my brother, it is a pleasure. And we appreciate you calling in, man. And we've been wanting to have you on the show for a while, but we know how busy everyone's schedules are, how demanding, how many different hats we wear. We understand that you just put your baby boy to bed just a minute ago. So we got to give you a special shout out to all the dads, all the poppies that are doing their work and handling their business with fatherhood. So congratulations on becoming a dad over the last couple of years, brother. What's that been like, by the way, since we're going to jump right in?
Oh no, it's a new challenge, but it's rewarding in the same time. And he's already more of a ham than I've ever been, and so I see it. So, but it's every day is so unpredictable. That, I think, is the number one thing. It's really taught me throughout all the years. I'm always thinking ahead and ahead and ahead, and it's like he's really taught me to be present, because I can't really like plan things out because he can get sick. So there's just a lot of things that I've learned just being a father, and I'm so grateful being a father. And so it's been awesome. But it's like moments like this where you're like, hey, let's get ready. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta put it to sleep. Oh, give him a bath, and So, but yeah, it's been amazing.
Well, congratulations again to your family, extending that legacy and carrying it on. And listen, man, I've been impressed with you yet again, man. Every time I look up some of your YouTube, some of your Instagram, we see some of your sketches, some of your work. I read up a little bit about your bio, man. And so we're going to jump right in, man. Yeah. I understand you were born in Connecticut, but you quickly got to New York, man. And what was that like, man, making into that transition and trying to make it in this world of acting?
So to deep a little bit of a more of a deeper dive. So my father came from Dominican Republic, moved to West Harlem, met my mom. She came from Dominican Republic as well, to Washington Heights. I was born in New Rochelle, which is like about 10-15 minutes away from Connecticut. Grew up till I was 18, 19 in Connecticut. And when I went to college, I met someone who wanted to be a filmmaker. I've always have been the comedian, and so I went to move to New York to pursue acting. But the only individual that I really inspired to be was John Leguizamo, and that was Broadway. So when I went to New York, meeting different individuals, trying to find a path, right? I started doing background acting because that was something as a Latino was a lot easier than just trying to go out there. And I took classes. But I decided to like film, do something, create my own to be in that project. And that's sort of where I am now, that I didn't wait and try to audition for the role because they weren't there, or there weren't roles that I felt that reflect who I am as Dominican. So I shot a feature, and from there I've been in the industry.
So you mentioned comedy. And if anybody has seen any of your work, they know you to be just that funny guy. In fact, I had a guy that told me when he knew I was bringing you on the show, he was like, yo, that's that cat from the Dominicans versus Puerto Rican sketch.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's got like millions of views on YouTube or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Now, did you write that?
Yeah, so at the time I was working with Flama. So they had a lot of individuals from the West Coast and East Coast. And the way Flama Univision did was they hired a bunch of YouTubers from Cali. And in New York, the comedy scene in New York around that time, that was around 2014, 15, 16, there wasn't as much. It was very independent. And so when I did Puerto Ricans versus Dominican, that was the first video that was coming from the East Coast that like literally brought in a new audience to Flama. But before I was doing very listicle things. And so like, the video I did prior to that was 5 signs that you're Dominican. But then I was like, let me just break the mold and let me just do like a sort of West Side Story, Puerto Ricans versus Dominicans, but not in a mean-spirited way. In a way, because the video ends with me being half brothers with him. But I wanted to really make fun, but in a light way about Puerto Ricans and Puerto Ricans making fun of us. But then the joke is that we have so many similarities. You're sort of making fun of yourself.
Yeah, it was very funny. So you've always been a comedian, a comic, man. You've always been a funny dude, man. So like, where does that come from, man? You just from being around your family, growing up as a kid, being like that class clown. I mean, what was that like, man?
I mean, I think, right, a lot of comedians, I consider myself sort of like a comedic actor, content creator. I think it's sort of like survival mode because, I grew, like we started, I grew up in Connecticut. I was like the only Latino growing up. And so I was always different and sort of a way to stand out. I was being funny and I was always the class clown. But then, as Dominicans, we have a lot of relatives that are storytellers, very funny storytellers. And, the term charlatan, and like these stories and like that's how people communicated. And shout out to my cousin Elmo Difoca, Jerry Diaz, because he was like the comedian of the family. And so I was always with him. And so like when we were doing this, professionally, I already had worked that muscle already for 10, 15, 20 years being, working and being the funny guy in the crew.
Yeah, man. Performance work is so intricate. I don't think people really realize how difficult it is. And it speaks to, a lot of different things that like the market, it speaks to competitiveness. My partner, she is a very skilled dancer and she auditioned for a dance type show. Mm-hmm. She's going to be performing in Italy next month.
Nice.
And she's got an opportunity to do some things out there, but it reminded me when she was auditioning, we met the actor Tony Plana a couple of years ago out here.
Yes.
Legendary Latino actor, been in, tons of films, Hollywood A-lister, television, you name it. Mm-hmm. And I talked to him one time, I got a chance to chat with him a little bit and I asked him, I said, hey, do you have any advice for like aspiring entertainers, actors, performers, creatives? And the first thing he told me, and I want you to get your opinion on this and speak to it. The first thing he told me was like, it's so competitive. He said, they will have your backup waiting for you right there. And if you can't hit that mark, if you can't nail that note, they'll replace you like that. Either you're gone, you're canceled, it's next person up. And I'm thinking, damn, if they tell him that to Tony Plana, what they gonna tell my ass who ain't been in one film, right? Who ain't done nothing, ain't got no credits to his name, right? Yeah. And I mean, like, it is extremely competitive and difficult to make it, right? I think, and again, to one of your points, I read an interview, I read some notes on your podcast, and somebody had asked you, like, what's next? And you had mentioned your one of your goals is to get more Dominicans on television.
Yeah.
And I got to imagine that's a hell of a challenge.
Oh, no, it's a huge challenge because at the end of the day, we could count on our own hands how many shows Latinos are on. And so I think that it's always been a challenge. It's been a challenge for a very, very long time. And, we had a few shows and we had Gordito Chronicles that was not renewed after one season. There was a couple of Netflix shows. So it is a big challenge. But you said it's very competitive. And that's where like people don't talk enough is like you have to be assured yourself. Like for someone like me who's done the back end and stuff, like where I've casted, I've done projects, so it's not personal. It's like a thing where it's like it's a moving machine. You need to know what your role is, but you have to be very, very confident that you don't take it personal because rejection is 99 times you get rejected and in one time you have that's the one. So it is very, very competitive. A lot of people are hungry out there, so you have to like You sort of have to really be in that space to understand the bigger picture, but also at the same time be very sure with yourself so you don't get eaten up when it's very, very competitive.
Well, it's funny because, you and I, and again, we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of things. Before we hit the cameras, before we hit live, we were talking about when did we first meet? And we met probably about 8 years ago, probably 7, 8 years ago, doing work around activating the Latino vote and getting millennials and getting individuals out there to make their voices heard. Listen, if you're in San Antonio, folks, where I currently am, the first day of early voting was yesterday. There are some important ballot measures on the ballot. We encourage everyone to educate themselves, get out there and make their voices heard. And this game of being heard, being involved, whether it's community, whether it's at the state level, national level, it's never ending. So whether it's election season or not, we got to be involved. And that speaks to this point of, capitalism, the American workforce. We have some people in our backgrounds, in our communities, Bago, that would say, okay, well, we need our own television stations to get more Dominican stories on television. We can't rely on the major networks. We can't wait for the Netflixes. We can't wait for the Hulus, because we may never get we may never get our shows put on. And then if we do get an opportunity, it's canceled after one season, right? It's canceled after half a season, or it's not renewed or something, right? And then our people go back to the drawing board. Part of the problem, though, I see is that our people in our communities, man, our communities are so diverse, man. We can't get people to agree on what they like, what they don't like, right? On preferences, on not preferences, right? I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah. That's the thing about it. What I've heard so much is that when it comes to something that is Latino, they put it like we're monolithic. They will all agree to everything, and that's far from the truth. Like it's just, you could even down to like a Dominican that is in Jersey or New York, their experience is not the same as Miami or LA. So it's so tough because, when you try to do a blanket, look, storytelling, the more specific you get, the broader it is. We've seen shows that are very, very specific. It's true to it. But when you try to broaden it and you try to like say, well, all the Latinos are going to like this, it gets to a point where it gets frustrating because it's not. We all don't feed it to us like we're all going to accept it like it's one. Like we have different experiences and we want to see that, very specific experiences.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's well said. And I think the other thing about it is that, listen, if we had to enlist a resident Dominican brother to tell us and curate what that Dominican experience would be like, it would have to be you. And I don't say that just to say that, but you're well known. People relate to you through the work, right? Yeah. Through this. I mean, right now as we're talking, you're very personable, man. And you got a long list of credentials, man. Someone like you could say, oh, well, listen, I'm busy, Maximo, I can't be on the show, or acting like, I'm talking to Sylvester Stallone right now, right? You very humble, right? You a humble cat up in here, and you've done all sorts of work, man. And so if someone had to ask, if someone was clueless about the Dominican experience, right? They knew nothing about anything. What could you say to them to help them identify or help them relate to this group of people out there, man? And I'm talking specifically out there in the Northeast, man, because I know that's where you break bread at.
We will party for anything.
Well, you ain't lying about that.
Anything. Like, one of the greatest things that I wanted to do, there's still something I want to do as far as like, there are, in New York City, obviously, in neighborhoods, you have in the summertime, Dominicans will put out lawn chairs. They will put a barbecue. They will do barbecues on the sidewalk and have parties. I remember last year walking through, I forgot where I was going, and I took a left by accident, and there was a birthday party for a little kid at 10 o'clock at night on the sidewalk. We will put a party anywhere. We just love having fun. I just came back from Dominican Republic. I took my son for the first time to Dominican Republic to meet the grandparents, and it's like we are just we just want to have a good time. We enjoy life. We're very simple in the sense that we don't need to have a lot to have a good time. I remember when we drove through Santiago and Dominican Republic, there was like all the way in the mountains. I'm talking about there's almost some parts where electricity, just very simple life, and the spirit and the energy is still the same. And I just think that we really enjoy life. We're very spirited people. Like I told you, we're charlatans. You will have a good amount of people that are comedians within the family and everything, and we're just enjoy life. And as you could tell, some of the Dominican baseball players that you see in the major leagues, they're just very passionate and they just enjoy, life. And so I could put that in a nutshell without being more specific, but in a broad stroke, we love to just have a good time.
Man, you ain't lying. And listen, that's something that a lot of people who are Latino share. Listen, I'm down here in San Antonio. Let me tell you, if there's a boxing match on a weekend, man, the whole street's rocking out. I don't care what barrio you at. The whole street's rocking out. When you got a young Mexican dude boxing, they riding with them, man. That fight this past weekend, and the whole city was watching that.
Yeah. So, but see, that's the thing, right? Dominicans, we have that in common, but there are probably more specific examples of what we do, but we still have that in common with all the other Latinos.
Sure. And so speaking of that, that was a beautiful translation. I understand Translators is the name of your current podcast. What can you tell us about the show? Where can we find it? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so my co-host and I, we did, it was so crazy. Again, talk about Dominica. So we had a friend who turned his living room into like a podcast / online radio studio. And in Washington Heights. And he's like, yo, you could come here. You can record anytime you want, do whatever you want to do. Just come over here. And my co-host and I, at the time back in 2015, we were like, look, let's do some actor studio for Latino actors. Let's hear their journey. Let's talk to them for an hour. And so we did about 8-9 episodes back in 2015. And then recently we brought it back, but we wanted to broaden the topics, not just as creators as an actor, but we had TV writers, we have directors, comedians, even social media. So pretty much our show talks over the 3 Ps, which is the passion, what was their passion and how they got started, the path, what decisions did they make and what they did to get what they were going, and then the process, what they do currently to maintain what they're doing. And we literally about 30 to 45 minutes go through the specific creatives and go through their journey, because as you know, as Latinos, at times we don't have, our parents that are just like, sure, you want to get into arts? Go right ahead. Just be an actor. We'll just pay for NYU. A lot of our guests are their parents were immigrants. They came here. They wanted them to have a profession, and they pivoted and they decided to get into the arts. And we wanted to hear that so we can inspire that next generation to know some of the decisions they made when they decided to be an actor or a director.
Yeah, man. So like, you talk about film, you talk about television, you talk about getting out here and doing some of this comedic work. Who are some of your personal influences, or what film was it that you watched, or what series was it that you watched? You were like, okay, that's the one. I'm done. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
I mean, A Living Color.
Oh my gosh, yes.
The Wayne brothers, because if like history was that like Fox at that time had Married with Children. I'm going way back, guys.
No, you're touching on them classics right now.
But In Living Color wouldn't be on any other network, and Fox was like, yo, let's go ahead. And it was huge because it was like the sketches was not like SNL. Now, don't get me wrong, I was watching SNL, but In Living Color, and so it's between John Leguizamo, who I saw, and some of the characters he had. There were family members of mine when I seen him perform, right? Like I cried laughing, like, yo, that's my uncle, or that's an aunt of mine. But In Living Color, in a sketch comedy, like that was like religion to me, that I would go to school, and mind you, at the time I'm in Connecticut, and I was literally I think that's part of where I probably started being the type of person that whatever I really enjoyed, I had to tell everybody, and that's me, because I would go to school and recite Homie the Clown or these classic sketches that were on there, and John Leguizamo. Like those were the two, and those were my influences as far as movie wise. I'm gonna get you some Wayne brothers, like Eddie Murphy. But yeah, I think when it really comes down to it, as a Latino, it was John Leguizamo.
Yeah, man. It's funny because somebody asked me too, like, hey, you're pretty good at interviewing. You got a cool show here. Who are some of your influences? And I told him Arsenio Hall. I said,
Yeah.
bro, Arsenio Hall, this brother had a relationship with the audience. He could like vibe with the audience, and he had guests on that were like from the community, right? It felt like they were like best friends, and they had like inside jokes, and they were like chilling with each other. And he had all the heavy hitters on that time.
Yeah.
He had Mike Tyson, he had Muhammad Ali, he had, all these infamous, people in the era, Eddie Murphy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Whitney Houston, all the headliners.
And that's so funny, because watching Arsenio Hall, if you had these individuals you were mentioning, you were going to see another side of them. Usually when they go to late night, it's like, all right,
Yeah.
fine, it's whatever. But when you saw them on Arsenio Hall, you saw the side that you were really vibing, that you really connected. And I think that that's so important. And like with translators, like we wanted to like do these interviews, but vibe and chill. That when people see them, they're like, that's the side we want to see. So Arsenio was someone I remember being up late watching it and really, really enjoying, and his musical guests were ridiculous too.
Oh yeah.
Like, it was just so
yeah, them
phenomenal.
concerts. They had some banger concerts on there.
Yeah. And also so important, Arsenio was giving opportunities from our community that we probably will not see somewhere else. That really was huge in people's careers, like comedians and actors and everybody. But that was so important to give them that voice. But at the same time, really putting them in a place where you really got to enjoy and see that side of them.
Yeah, man, it's underrated. And that also speaks to the importance of continuing, this sort of content creation. Right now, it seems like, well, I don't know how accurate it is, but it seems like a lot of people are doing podcasting these days or getting in the business of podcasting. I heard someone say, well, I wish I could do a podcast, but, there's so many podcasts out there, so I'm not going to get involved in it. The way I heard it is like this. It's like when you go down the cereal aisle at the grocery store, you got all these different types of cereal. But people have that one cereal, that number 3 cereal that they go to time and time again because everyone has their flavor.
Yeah.
And so that speaks to doing this work, right? You can put out your stuff and have your audience and find your niche. There are people that are getting really creative with their podcasts and their shows, content creation, things like TikTok and putting out, sketches and all those things. What do you say to that, man? What's the importance of continuing to do this sort of stuff and putting out that work?
Well, here I am on your podcast and your show, and the quality is on point. And I think that it is true that there's a lot of them. Same token, there's a lot, but what is the quality? You have to also understand, like when I started the podcast in Latinos Out Loud, we did it in 2017, and the Latino space and the audience, right? When we were doing the podcast 6-7 years ago, the people, like I had relatives like, ¿Qué podcast? What is that, right? The audience is now more educated. They know what they want. So as you're creating these podcasts, or even the same way sketches, you have to be mindful that the audience and the consumer knows what they want. And so you have to respect the craft, put in the work. There are a lot of podcasters, just a bunch of friends like, yo, we mad funny. We're going to talk about what's going on this week. Okay, but then how does that separate you from the other one? So I think sorry for my dog.
Nah, you good.
But at the same token, what's really, really important is to create that niche, create your voice, what makes you unique, and respect the craft and the quality of it. Because if not, you're right. There's just so much that's going on on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, YouTube, that if you're not really putting in that extra work and respecting the craft, it's going to get lost.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. And so it's easy to get lost in the sauce. So if you're putting in work, any type of work, you got to make sure you come correct. And so we've been last year in 2022 right here at VodPod. We shot 50 episodes of this show. This year we got 13 episodes strong into the year, and we're continuing to go down and just continuing to interview and talk to and kind of just, chop it up with inspiring people like yourself. So I got to give you a big thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
And, sharing some words of wisdom to our audience, talking about a few things here and there. I got to ask you as well, since you talked about Dominican athletes, who is your favorite Dominican athlete?
Wow.
I know that's a tough one, man.
Wow.
There's so many of them.
Great. That's a great question, because I'm torn by saying who's my favorite Dominican athlete, because I'm a Mets fan. I'm a Knicks fan, right? So a lot of times there are Dominican athletes, but they're not playing for my team, right? So everything has to work in unison. For somebody who has been influential as far as impact, he played for the Red Sox, Big Papi.
You got to give him a shout out.
Big Papi. And I know, I say this, but people are gonna text me, and people are gonna be like, "Really?"
Well, okay, give me a couple then. You don't got to just name him. Because there's so many. I mean, you got Pedro. You got to give him a shout out too.
I'm gonna throw one. I feel like, because when I talk about Dominican athletes, I look at it in like the multidimensional that we are, in a sense that it's like who are favorites, but really or impactful. Felipe Lopez played for St. John's.
Oh my gosh, NBA. Come on now.
He is one of my favorite athletes because of the impact that he had, because he was that trailblazer that then has a new generation of Dominican basketball players. You have obviously on the Celtics, now I'm forgetting his name, but there's a Dominican basketball player for the Celtics. There's a generation of Dominican basketball players because of what Felipe did. Don Papi. That's my boy's name is Don Papi. Big Papi, he was also in there, but what he's done, and so I feel like he's one of my favorite, but it has to be Felipe Lopez because of what he did and the time that he did it in basketball.
Yeah, so make sure, folks, if you're not familiar with that name, you got to check out the ESPN documentary on Felipe Lopez, The Dominican Dream, all-around baller. It's interesting. He had a great, and again, we're kind of analyzing sport. We do sports talk every now and then, but great college career, like one of the number one recruits coming out of high school, coming out of New York out there. Still played. He played pro ball long after that, but he really kind of peaked in high school, college, and just a great ball player. Inspiring story. And so, man. So what else is good, man? I mean, talk to us really quickly as well here. I wanted to go here with you as well because we talked a little bit about voter engagement, being involved in the community. Community work is difficult on a lot of different levels, you know, but talk to me a little bit about the importance of getting out there and voting, of being involved in the community, whether it's being, vice president or secretary of a neighborhood association or city council or whatever it may be. I mean, the way I see it is that our people, if we're there, they deserve a voice at the table. And our people are there in the communities, and some of those people have been taken advantage of for a long time in a lot of different ways. And so talk to us a little bit about the importance of being involved.
Well, we met with Voto Latino, and we met as far as, one of the great things about Voto Latino, I was asked to come in because, I was doing these videos. I did a video called Vote Right with my parody group, Bago and No. I, around that time, also was part of the community board in Washington Heights. And so I think at the end of the day, where a lot of the issues and situations is that people just think general election, every 4 years. And then it's just, either there's the candidates before it's the actual final two. But one of the things that I've learned from a while, from just even for the community board, was you can have more influence locally in the state and even in the part of the city that you're in. And so a lot of times people get caught up, especially with social media. They're just looking at just scrolling and everything, and there's an opportunity for impact locally. And so I just wanted to bring that out. I wanted to help out some local individuals or community-based organizations, just to bring that in there. So to educate, because a lot of times the younger, 18, 19, 20, they just watch the news and they just don't get involved when they don't know the big tool that they can have as far as being involved, but locally, because there's elections locally here. There's like 5,000, 4,000. So it's a bigger impact, but you only hear the main ones. Either it's going to be mayor or president or governor, but there are a lot of stuff that if you don't vote can influence your day-to-day life. And so those are the type of things that I was been involved in the past. And then currently, there have been individuals that be like, listen, we just want to get individuals to be more, listen to you and talk to you and stuff. So I've been involved in there, but all my life I've always been trying to get involved to just educate and let people know, because if at the end of the day, people are so busy being consumed with social media and stuff, like they don't take a step back and see there's a real world out there that they can be involved and make a difference.
Yeah, leadership is, something that's at the premium these days. We're always looking for leaders, always looking for people to step outside the box, trailblazers, people that are innovative, that can bring solutions to intricate problems. And if there's anybody can do that, it's people like us. It's Latinos, it's Dominicans, it's people in Texas that have had to be innovative with less. They had to be creative because they didn't have as many resources. So if there's any people that are listening to this, listen, you've got an opportunity to step in there and lead, whether it's in, the president of your high school, school board or the school student union, whatever it may be, whether it be it's the fraternity at your college or sorority. You've got an opportunity to grab some skills, organize, work with each other, be leaders, and then go out there and make a change and get involved. And that's speaking at a very basic level. Many of our people are already doing some amazing things, whether it be at the city level, the municipality level, or beyond. And so, we need it. The reason we state that is because this work, as you know, can be daunting. It's cumbersome. It's hard. It's like, oh man, why try? They're just going to, screw us in the long run, or they're going to stick it to us. And the problem with that is that sort of futility is us giving up. It's us throwing in the hat. And there are forces that are at work right now that are working just as hard to take our rights away. Again, they would rather us not have the opportunity to vote. They would rather us say, you know what, we're going to, give them less rights. We're going to stick them in the worst schools. We're going to pay them less. And that speaks to the work that has to be continuously done to combat that. Unfortunately, over the last couple of years, Juan, since we met each other, some would argue that the country has regressed with civil rights, right? With racial justice, with economic, inequalities, man. And that's freaking sad, bro.
But that's the thing. To me, when I think about that, I wish, and I think that again, I don't know if the forces that you mentioned that are working against that, I don't think that they want that. But I think it's if young people are just so creative and they're innovative and they're full of energy and they're of life. And I feel like if there is a moment in time where you can educate them or get them involved to do stuff, I think they will be able to understand how strong their voice is. So you're so right. And I feel like there needs to have that more, because when we come in numbers and we speak up, we've seen the work that can be done. So you're absolutely right. And again, when you're 18, 19, 20, you're not even thinking future. You're not thinking as much that. You're just thinking you're so young. But at the same time, I feel like there needs to be a little bit of that foundation, because the community that they're a part of, they could make a big difference. So I agree with you in that we have to work hard, because there are people that kind of want to take it away. And before you know it, you wake up and you don't have the rights that you had a few years back.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, man, you're touching on some good subjects right now, man. And so if you're hearing that, folks, go out and make your voice heard. And I state that again because here in San Antonio, as I mentioned, there are some things on the ballot that should be concerning to some folks. I've heard from some other folks that people haven't been inspired by the candidates. And hey, that may be the case. That may be the case for a lack of better terms, but at least you're doing the research, and there are other items on the ballot that we can get out there and vote on. So, not to make this a soapbox to talk about, this sort of stuff, but what better place to talk about it, man, because there are elections happening all over the country, whether in New York, Philly, Michigan, Minnesota, the West Coast, out in Phoenix. There are opportunities for you to go out there and make your voice heard, folks. So we hope that you can go and do that with wherever you may be hearing this from. We appreciate everyone listening in, chiming in with us. Big shout out to all of our viewers here in San Antonio and beyond. Juan has got to get his dog. What type of dog is that, bro?
Oh, man, Pomeranian, Poodle, and a third one right now that her barking got me a little.
Well, I'm lucky I'm not at my house.
It's my puppy that is acting that way. But yeah, look, I just wanna tell you, you've been doing such amazing work from the time we've met. It was always great when we went to a Voto Latino event and talked to the younger generation. But I feel like I'm giving you flowers because, watching you in the last few years, you did amazing work. And you're right. Being out there, it's not sexy in the sense that it's a lot of silent work. It's a lot of inspiring. And I want to give you your flowers because you've been doing such a great job, including doing this show. So props to you, man. And that's why when you asked me to be a part of the show, it was an easy yes.
Well, flowers accepted, and I'll throw a couple back at you, sir. Anytime that you need something, consider it done. Good friend, great ally, Juan Bago, the man, folks. Look him up. Follow him on social media. Much love and appreciation, brother. Listen, I think we do this work because we're out here working for people like our mothers, our tias, people like our people back on the mainland, right? People that are here living on the west side and the south side of town, right? And so we've got to be those forces and to get out there and continually advocate for people that have less for us. You and I have been fortunate enough to travel, to have education, right? To get out there and network and do some things. So we try to lift everybody up, right? We got to lift as we climb, as they say.
Yeah, man. Yep, definitely.
So go ahead and give us some closing words, sir. We're going to let you feed the dogs in just a minute, man. So go ahead and give us some closing words. Give those dogs a treat, man. So give us some closing words and end the show.
Yeah, I think you touched upon it in the last point is, always give back, always influence, always tell people about the big picture, especially this new generation that, now with the chat GPT and all the information that they can gather, this next generation is relying on us to really give them the gems and the advice because, again, I think it's super important to get them involved. I think there is a reason why they feel like they can't get involved or it's boring, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so I feel like as us get out there and influence and give back, it's so rewarding.
All right, man. Well, there it is. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Make sure you follow and subscribe to the Translator Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts at. Thanks so much. We'll catch you next time, sir. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next week. Much love, and have a great night. We love y'all. Peace. And we're out.